How's everybody? Okay.
Is Emily joining? Oh, she's on. I see it. I didn't notice it. Hey, Emily.
Okay. So, juggling around there. Slow down, everybody. Okay. I like these, but I don't like these. Anyway, I will call the Southbury Board of Selectmen regular meeting, January 7th of 2021 to order at 7 p.m. Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next up is public comment. I've received no public comment at this time. Nothing's been emailed to me. We have announcements. Yes, sir.
Did you want me to make those motions?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion to add to new business a potential statement by the Board of Selectmen regarding the events that occurred yesterday in the nation's capital.
I'll take that motion.
I'll second.
Mike has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or any nays? And we'll add that to the agenda.
And
item 2.
Right. And then as to item 1 on new business lot line revision, I'd like to make a motion that we instead add an executive session and add it to an executive session at the end of the meeting.
And because it's a real estate transaction and go ahead.
For the reason that it's the sale of real estate and publicity concerning the topic could have an impact on the sales price.
Okay, motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Justin will second it. Thank you, Mike, also, but Justin. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or any abstentions? Hearing none. I will move on to the consent agenda. There was something in there where we're going to pull out. There's talk about. So we have resignations, we have refunds, and okay. I'm sorry. We're good. Just a clarification on the resolution. Can we have a motion to pull the authorize the first selectman to sign transfer of license or lease agreement out of the consent agenda to add that to new business? As the because we need to change the resolution. Well, no, the resolution is correct. License, not lease. Is that clear to the board how that works? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And it's Justin Betty seconded. Any discussion on that?
I would like to recuse myself from the portion having to do with reappointing Robert Harrison, since he is my dad.
It's accepted, I'm sure.
Okay. Can I just ask a question about the social services position? I know what we're appointing is a part-time position. Can you just explain how that's going to work and how we envision the hours and structure of the role?
Yeah, we're still working that out, but it will be a part-time position. They do have an MSW, and they will be working out of that office, and we're going to still try to work with the interns. So Claire's been working on that. I don't exactly have the hours, and I think it needs to be a little flexible as we move forward of when they're available. I'll have Claire let you know what that's about and how that works. But they're ready to start.
And we still have the intern there, is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not sure how long. Let's see how it goes, but I'm hoping to still work with an intern. It's pretty obvious that, you know, we really, one of the good things about working with interns is not just the value to us and getting things done, but also to the value to the community. You know, that we help mentor, you know, get these people into their jobs and what they do. So an internship is important, and I do anticipate trying to use an intern also as time allows.
Jeff, would you like me to jump in here?
Oh,
Am I
Claire's
allowed?
on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to interrupt.
No,
just
that's okay. I didn't see you.
It's okay. Just to answer your question, right now we're having the new part-time social services employee. She'll be working 20 hours a week. We have our intern until May or June, and then we'll see if we want to continue with that program and get another intern. But we're not obviously at that point yet. So right now 20 hours, but she's flexible if we need more time from her.
There we go. Claire's been working on that side of it quite a bit, and working directly with the intern, and also discussing with the person we're looking to hire. So she's been doing a lot with that.
Yeah.
So, Jason, you all set with that?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Any abstentions? Any nays? And hearing none, it passes. Minutes of December 17th of 2020. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? And it carries. Under unfinished business, Connecticut Water Customer Advisory Board, I'm looking to have a representative from the town government. I would respectfully ask if you could appoint, I would say that the first selectman to represent the municipal government to that advisory board. Jason has been, I've asked Jason to help with this, with other things, including the rate increase and whatnot, because there's going to be a lot of work to be done on that, and I think he'll be valuable there. We attended a meeting the other day that technically I wasn't really invited to, and it was a mistake, but they graciously let us attend anyway and ask questions. But we need to form a Heritage Water Advisory Board because we are considered separate from in the agreement. Jason, could you explain that?
Yeah, so when Connecticut Water purchased Heritage Village Water Company back in, I think it was 2016, the town entered into an agreement with them whereby they did various things. And one of the items was that if the Heritage Village Water Board of Directors ceased to exist, so if they merged Heritage Village Water into Connecticut Water, then instead of the Board of Directors, they would form an advisory council made up of local officials, health officials, economic development officials, customers of of Southbury, Oxford, and Middlebury. They haven't done that yet. So they do have this other advisory council, which is more of a statewide thing, which Jeff and I attended last night, which was helpful. They gave us some information on the rate increase. The rate application hasn't been submitted yet, but they did give us sort of broad strokes that they're looking for a $20 million increase, which is about 20% above their current $100 million. They say for the average residential customer, it's going to be 40 cents a day or $12 a month. But they have all different classes of customers, and Heritage Village may very well be treated somewhat differently. So until we get the rate application itself, we don't really know where we stand on that. And I did ask at the end of the meeting what they were doing about this Heritage Village Advisory Council, and they indicated that they would be reaching out to form one and to get appointments from the various towns. So they invited us today to be a member of this statewide council, so we could be a member of both. We could go to the statewide meetings, and we'll have the Heritage Village thing as well.
Anybody have any questions? So I think the first step, and then obviously we can change it later on, but I think I would entertain a motion by the Board of Selectmen to appoint the first selectman, whoever may be in this office, as the representative for the municipality government.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Made in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Thank you. So the next on the agenda, I think, is the, can we bring the statement up that the Board of Selectmen could read before we, and then we'll go to the reports. I don't know, Jason, could you, I'm working on a iPhone, so it's a little,
I have
swear
I have it in
I'm
front
gonna
of
see
me.
if I can get a camera on my computer.
I mean, I could read it, and I could tell everyone the genesis of it. Jeff reached out to me late this afternoon and asked if I could assist in putting together a statement, and Jeff and I discussed this, and this is what we have, and you know, happy to discuss it. But what, as it's currently written, it says, "We're disheartened by the events that took place yesterday afternoon in Washington, D.C. Violent protests and attacks on our government have no place in our democracy. As elected leaders of our community, we condemn the use of violent protest for any purpose, especially the attempted coercion of governmental and constitutional functions, which we hold dear as Americans. While we encourage and welcome peaceful assembly and protest as a means of influencing governmental action, we condemn, in the strongest possible terms, the actions that took place yesterday at the Capitol building." So for purposes of discussion, I'd make a motion that the board adopt this statement as a statement of the board.
Kind of technicality, can we have a second on that, Mike? Thank you, Mike. Okay, it's over for discussion. Anybody would like to make a comment?
I would like to take an opportunity for the board to, I know Jason and appreciate you putting this together, but before we pass something, I would prefer to have seen this ahead of time to be able to wordsmith this to some degree. And so I understand that there's, you know, perhaps the timing is of the essence, but I would prefer to take some time to review this to be able to not have 30 seconds and to potentially change some of the language here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just indicate, just so folks know, I literally sent this to Betsy like 5-10 minutes ago. So it was, we had you know.
And that's where I'm saying,
we had it earlier, certainly would have circulated it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm just saying, I think it's in our best interest that we make it our best statement where we all get time to review it and have input rather than rushing to approve something.
Okay, anybody else?
I just say, Jeff, I'd say,
Good, Mike.
Jason, thank you for taking the lead on drafting these remarks. You know, and on first read, certainly understand where Emily's coming from, but on first read, you know, I think that these are appropriate sentiments. You know, I would say, you know, I think we should not only condemn in the strongest possible terms, the action that took place yesterday at the Capitol building, but the actions that led and fomented the actions, starting with the President of the United States, who encouraged, and others who encouraged those protests. But, you know, I understand the language here. I'd be acceptable of this language as written, but certainly understand Emily's desire to want to go back to review it and take some time.
Justin?
I'm comfortable with the language, but I can certainly understand taking a look and you know, maybe we approve it via email tomorrow, end of day, however long folks think it should take.
We can do that. Just, George?
My concern is that we've had violent protests, in some cases, far, far worse than we saw at the Capitol. And I'm not condoning anything that happened yesterday. That was a travesty. But I mean, it seems odd to me that all of a sudden now we're writing these resolutions where we've had horrible situations, cities burning, looting, rioting, people getting hurt and assaulted, and we've said nothing. So I mean, to me, this is a bad situation in Washington, but we've seen worse around the country. So I don't know. I'm just a little bit disturbed that all of a sudden now we feel a need to say something when we've said nothing hardly at all about all the other rioting and looting and disasters we've seen all over the country. So I don't know. I'm kind of with Emily, and maybe we step back and take a day and consider the options, and maybe we modify this thing a little bit.
So I'll get to.
Go ahead, Jeff. You haven't had a chance. No, you haven't had a chance to speak yet.
So what I think differentiates this, I mean, there's a history, there's always has been of at times, and we don't condone it at all. There's violence. I, as an elected official, I put a statement out just tonight. I had to gather my thoughts because I need to properly think this out, and took a little time, and I had very little time when this unfolded to digest it. And part of that statement is that this is at the doors of our government and infiltrating into our government. I'm very concerned that this is going to limit the access to our government officials. And you can read my statement. I'm not trying to promote it out there, but my fear is, as we all know, we all serve here, and our fear is our families, retribution, and now, and is there violence? And for government officials, I mean, if you're in our history, the president was able to walk among the people and, meet with the people. And then through a series of events, the presidency becomes very isolated in order to protect him or her. And our government officials now have limited access, are going to be obviously limited some more, which is not what our government's about, open government and access to our officials. And that's concerning. That's why, if you're wondering why, if we would spend a great deal of time condemning violence, but this is bringing it right to the doorstep of people who should be able to access, and they shouldn't have to live in fear. And unfortunately, in many government officials, whether it be at the federal level, and even now we're seeing at state level, and to be honest, there's always a concern, even at the local level, going to the grocery store. Can I have a civil conversation or get my groceries? The people of Southbury have been very good about that. But there's other public officials who really don't want to go to the grocery store because they're worried about what might happen or whatever. So when government officials become worried about that, I think that's a serious problem because there should be access to these people without this kind of restriction. I think you should be able to walk into the Capitol building, make an appointment, go in, and if possible, have a civil discussion with your senator or your congressman, whether you agree with them or not. And I fear how this is going to play out over time, what that's going to mean to our government officials. Mike, go ahead.
So I just want to say that it would be an extraordinary embarrassment to this town and to our Board of Selectmen if we dare try to make some type of false equivalency between what happened yesterday in the Capitol and any other recent act of protest that turned violent in our country. It would be shameful for us to even consider that. What happened yesterday was an attack on American democracy. It was a coordinated and planned effort to stop the certification of the results of a fair, free, and secure election that has been challenged, and that has had every right to be challenged in court and rejected 60 plus times, and that was then certified last night as the men and women who serve in Congress returned to their post, as they said, and did their civic duty as per the Constitution of the United States. That was an attack on the Constitution. It was an attack on our nation. It was a domestic terrorism attack from within on our government, period. Any other false equivalency would be an absolute embarrassment for our town, for our residents, and for the members of this Board of Selectmen.
My question to the five of the rest of the board, though, is there have been incidents in your tenure on the Board of Selectmen that have been similar in nature, and I'm not aware of any incident or any time that a resolution has been passed or a statement has been made about those times. So again, I'm with George. I'm a bit confused as to why we're calling this as a special incident, that they're putting the statement out, and why I would like some time to review it. I think it's worthy and important to do that.
Can I just ask, Emily, what can you name an incident? Because not in certainly Justin, Jeff, George's, and our time on the Board of Selectmen has the Capitol been stormed violently by protesters, by rioters. They weren't protesters, let's be clear.
We've
They
had
were rioters.
people tearing down
70
statues.
people
Hold
were
on, hold on.
arrested.
Hold on. Emily, go ahead.
In the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, 70 people were arrested because of.
They were legally in, but they were legally in the chamber.
I didn't say it was exact. I said similar situations. You could defer.
And they were rightfully
similar,
removed
but
from
if
the
people
chamber.
are acting inappropriately, that 70 arrests are made.
You have every chance. I agree that
Point
we
of order.
should
I'd
all have a
like to
chance to
have
review the
an
statement.
organized
Point of
talk
order.
here, and Mike, you're interrupting everybody, and it's frankly annoying. Stop it, please.
Emily, can you finish?
Yeah, my point is that I was saying, Mike, is that, and I'll just repeat, I apologize, is that we may differ on feeling whether that is a similar situation or not, but if you have 70 people in a Capitol building being arrested, then it is a disorderly conduct, and why I make that statement.
George, do you have something?
Yeah, we've had incidents in the Capitol where people were tearing down statues, and we've had to call in, various I don't know if they were National Guard or what, but I mean, there's been a lot of violent activity in D.C. in the last, 6 months or so. I mean, this was bad. I'm not trying to, say what happened yesterday was acceptable. It was totally unacceptable. And frankly, I'm embarrassed to call myself a Republican in some ways after all this happened. But, to say it's shameful and call false equivalence, well, I just don't go that far. In fact, what's happened with, some of these other cities? And why? I mean, Jeff, you're talking about people being worried. Look at ammo and guns. I mean, gun sales are at record levels. You can't even get ammo. Ammo's out of stock on practically everything. People are worried, and they're not worried specifically about what happened yesterday in D.C. They're worried about all the other riots and looting and all the violence we've had over the past 8 months.
So I believe that with working on this statement, that condemning that all the violent protests at this point, I think is appropriate, especially the attack on our nation's government.
But that's not what this statement says, which is why I'm saying, if that's the intent, that's not what's happening here, and I think that needs to be reworded then.
Okay,
Well,
so go ahead.
I had a couple of things I wanted to say, but just to respond to that, and I'm fully supportive of discussing wordsmithing and different words. It does say, as elected leaders of our community, we condemn the use of violent protest for any purpose. But one of the things that I wanted to say is, throughout my tenure on this board, the one thing probably more than anyone has shied away from is engaging in any discussions outside the realm of our responsibility as members of the Board of Selectmen. I really shy away from our board chiming in on national issues, shying away from being lobbyists of the state legislature. I've spoken against that on both sides. Then folks have brought stuff up throughout. And I also, because I take my role seriously sitting on this board, I also shy away from making statements about those things personally on my personal social media pages or anything like that. And you won't find much about that. Though I was moved yesterday to say something about this because having spent some time in DC, having worked in the halls of Congress, seeing our government attacked. I mean, that's what that is. You're talking about our sacred temple of democracy, our Capitol building. Seeing that attacked and the way it was attacked in an effort to disrupt a governmental process, I see that as I find it embarrassing. I find it offensive. It's an affront to our democracy, to our way of life. And I think we have a responsibility as elected officials to speak out about stuff like that when it happens. And I tried very hard in the comments I posted yesterday personally. And when Jeff asked me to assist in putting this together, I tried very hard with this as well to make it apolitical. And I know there's so much division in our country right now when it comes to politics and political beliefs and whatnot. But I think we can all agree that we are against attacks on our democracy, attacks on our government, storming our Capitol building. Those are certain principles that sort of rise above all else. So that's why I found this to be a little different than maybe some of the other things that have occurred over the years. And this would not be the first time that I condemned violent protests as a member of this body. I did so last June when we had discussions concerning the what was going on in the country at that time, and I made a statement that included similar sentiments. So, thanks, Jeff.
Okay. So do we feel that we should wordsmith this some more? Is that the indication of getting from the board here? I mean, I'm not hearing anything.
I feel strongly
listen.
that we should. I think I've made that pretty clear.
I'd like to give people the opportunity to do that. I'm not sure what I would change, but I might add something to it, and I think we need that opportunity at least to propose some
okay.
mods. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
Jeff, I'd say
Mike?
we have a precedent of doing that. We've out of respect for each other, we've always had a precedent of trying to give each other time to review something. Well, Jason, again, I think this is what you said was very well said, and this is very well written, and I'd be comfortable with it. Certainly understand and respect Emily and George wanted to have time to sit with it, and make any suggestions. So.
Yeah, okay. I certainly have no issue with that. I would just caution everyone to the extent that we are going to get around a statement to issue. It should not be of the political variety. So I've heard one selectman talk about what incited this and the president. We should not be talking about that. And I've heard others talk about riots last year and other issues that have caused great concern in our community and certainly have taken up some time with our board. That are serious, but I think that if we're going to respond to this incident yesterday, we should certainly be comfortable with the words used, but I'd ask that it be apolitical.
I agree, because one of the things we have to recognize as a young male guy who, had my share of what I would call bullying back and forth with other young men, violence escalates, and it's a thing that happens in nature, and it escalates more at times, and we can't keep escalating violence. We learn that as we get older, more tempered. so this is a concern that are we escalating more and more? And I don't want to name blame or where the blame or how it arises, except that it is here. And we need as leaders to say violence needs to stop. And I felt compelled when I had time to gather my thoughts with my busy day and what's going on with budgets and everything, that to not make mention or not do anything. I don't think this is a time where I agree with Jason. At times we don't want to get. I don't want to get into the politics of it. I don't want to get into who started what. We need not to do this as a country, as a nation, as a people. Not have violence. We just can't. I mean, it's not good for us. So, who made the motion on that?
I did. I will withdraw them. I just will withdraw. Well, what's the I guess I'll withdraw the motion, and then if we want to, I guess if people want to provide comments, we would have to have a meeting in order to approve something, but we could always schedule that if we wanted to do that.
I would like to propose that you work with less than a quorum, perhaps Emily, and maybe if Mike wants to tone in, but form a little group and.
Yeah, I'd be quite comfortable with Jason and Emily just working together, see what Emily has to say, and then come back to the group.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think we need to make a motion on that. You've withdrawn the motion, Jason. So you'll work with Mike and Emily and yourself to come up with a non-political statement from the board. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you all. So I'll go. Let me do the. Let's go on to, I think, the first Selectmen's report. I'll apologize. It's been an extremely busy week and meetings back to back, and I have not been able to write up pretty much what's going on. So what I'd ask is, the fuel tanks are operating. We're getting fuel up there. I was the first to get fuel with car one. I was very proud to bring my Hyundai up there and fill up with my 9.5 gallons. So we're up and operating there. We had a little bit of time where we had to get fuel locally because it wasn't completely in operation for everybody, but we were able to get through, and it's working. If anybody's driven up there, and it's shaping up pretty good, and we'll get some more plantings back in the spring and finish some more things up. What else? Budgets, we're still working on the budgets. There'll be some more to come. There'll also be some information. We will probably be getting together in a special meeting to deal with not only the budget, not the budget for next year, but the current budget and what's going on with here with our current budget and how what we're looking at with that. Is there any questions from the board of me? Any issues that you know of, or questions of? I apologize. I have not had a chance to even formulate thoughts this week. My glasses broke out. These are old glasses, and my glasses broke on Christmas Day, and I haven't even had a chance to make an appointment. Only to find my doctor got bought out, and I have to go someplace. So, any questions? I don't hear any. Okay.
Nope.
Reports from liaisons. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll back up. If our numbers look good, I'm hoping by next meeting, and if everybody's comfortable with it, that we hopefully will be able to have a meeting in person if everybody's comfortable with that. Only because if our numbers are coming down, we wanted to wait till we saw the if there was issues with the holidays coming forward. They are up and down, but they've actually come down. And I think we may be able to have in-person meeting at the next meeting, I'm hoping, if they stay steady. We did very well. And of course, the reason we had closed town hall was because we did run through a number of us who have had COVID, and we wanted to kind of get a handle on it and get that stopped. So we've been doing pretty well with that here in town hall, and I think we can open it up. So look forward to seeing everybody in person, socially distanced, and hopefully that'll work at the next meeting. Reports from liaisons, Selectman Bertram.
Okay, Jeff. Actually had a lot of things going on. I don't know how much detail anybody wants to hear, but I'll start talking and you can tell me to stop if you're hearing more than you want. The Mobile Telecom Task Force had a pretty busy week. I got to congratulate and commend Joe Ruggiero for all the hard work he's doing. He's really moving the ball forward with all his research and his testing. He has informed me that there are currently 10 working cell towers in the town of Southbury, which I didn't realize there were that many. We had a very good meeting with Mr. Ed Edelson. He is a current and 4-year member of the State Siting Council, and he has an awful lot of experience with mobile coverage issues and towers. That's a very common issue that they deal with. I want to thank Ed for his time. We spent about an hour and a half in a meeting, and he shared a lot of his knowledge and experience with us, and it was very valuable. We learned a lot, and he gave us a lot of good ideas to consider going forward. Joe and Ed have both reviewed the history of the proposed cell towers that were planned at one time for Perkins Road, and there was also one the third one was planned at the firehouse up in the Purchase. None of those ever got built, and some of those projects go back to like 2009. So it was interesting to hear about all the different things that happened and didn't happen. Joe, one thing I wanted to mention is Joe Ruggiero has generated coverage maps for Southbury for each of the 4 cell service providers. I've mentioned that before, and you've seen them in presentations. What I'd like to propose and see happen if we can is to work with Dave Richards and get these maps somehow loaded up onto the town website so people can actually see where they're at and what kind of coverage they have. Not sure how that's done. The maps are done on Google Earth, which may not be amenable to loading on the website. But Jeff, with your permission, I'll contact Dave and see what we can do. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that'll work. My
Okay.
only concern is that we can't put that up. If we put it up and make the link, we have to make sure that every so often we're going to have to look at this, because if coverage changes, let's say in 5 years, I'm not sure if it will, but we have to update that. We would have to make sure or take it down if it changes. So that's my only concern.
Well, that's a good concern. I didn't even think about that, but I mean, we could leave it up for a year and then take it down or whatever.
Yeah,
but...
I don't want to do a study every year, but that's just a concern, and we probably should talk about that and see if we can do that. All right.
Some of the tentative, I call them conclusions, but they're really just points of interest that need to be verified. Cell coverage in general is pretty good for most of the town. We do have some dead spots, and we can measure them. The Purchase is probably the worst. Well, it is the worst. We have one very bad spot on Kettletown Road, and there's some issues in Lakeside, kind of sporadic. The Purchase is the big problem. Another thing we've learned, and this is a lot from Mr. Edelson, is that distributed antenna systems, these are the mini cells that we'd like to be talking about, don't really work very well. And a lot of people have them in certain spots, but they're not a great solution in general. The big towers are a better solution, unfortunately, I think, for some. We have identified a few potential areas for an additional cell tower near the Purchase, And these areas were identified mainly because they weren't seen as objectionable to homeowners, and they're relatively isolated, and they're not really near houses. One location is on state-owned land, and the other is the firehouse, which was looked at pretty closely before AT&T pulled the plug on their capital spending. One thing I'll mention about the firehouse is that it has a direct line of sight to the cell tower at Public Works that the police use. It's not really a cell tower, but their radio antenna. That allows us to put in, if we want, a microwave connection between the emergency response center at the Purchase Firehouse, which is sort of our backup, and the main emergency response and dispatch and police. And that's something that Mr. Edelson mentioned was a big plus that the police thought about back, I don't know, whenever they were looking at 2014 maybe, but it never got implemented. But something to think about if you do put some stuff at the firehouse and the Purchase, you can have a direct link. Right now we're using T1 lines, which are based on wires. So if you have a bad storm, you're going to probably lose those, but you won't lose the microwave connection. Another interesting thing that Mr. Edelson mentioned is that the cell companies are not doing their own towers. They're giving them out to third parties. And we could actually, if we want on our own, put together an RFP and ask for somebody to come in and say, okay, you want to build a cell tower at the firehouse? Give us a proposal and we'll consider it. And there are revenue options here. I mean, basically the cell people, they pay rental by the month, and it's quite a substantial amount, as you well know. So that's another thing to think about. Another comment that we're kind of discussing is we had a lot of service complaints from people in town. They submitted them via email. And a lot of those complaints have come from places where we have actually measured a pretty decent cell signal. So we're thinking at some point we may want to reach out to the people that submitted those complaints to see if we can maybe go out and take some measurements. Maybe when COVID subsides, we can go out and do a few readings and see, if we can find out what the issue is with their particular cell phone coverage. Anyway, anybody have any questions on what I've said there, or you just kind of glazed over and want me to finish?
I was wondering if I could get a cell phone tower on my farm.
Yeah. Well, let's put out an RFP, Jeff.
No, I'm not high enough. Do it. It's already covered.
Anyway, at the Energy Task Force, we had a pretty busy week, actually. We had a meeting with Chris Whitman of Solomon Energy, and we reviewed his recommendations. He's been working closely with Chuck Liddy and Tom Connor. They've been exploring a bunch of different options very intently. I mean, again, these guys, Chuck and Tom, I mean, the amount of volunteer work they've done is amazing. Southbury runs on its volunteers, and it's people like that keep us going. But to cut to the chase, the current best thinking is to go with what they're calling a virtual net metering option, as opposed to building our own solar arrays on property. What this means is that it's a zero upfront investment. It's totally a financial transaction. The required arrays are built by a third party in other towns. They could be anywhere in Eversource country. It could even be in another state. So to get involved with this, Southbury would sign a contract with the third party, and you get fixed cost electricity at about 9 cents per kilowatt hour for a 20-year period. It's a 20-year deal. Distribution charges are reduced. There is a discount, but they could fluctuate, and they're paid to Eversource. You do get a discount plan with the distribution, but it's not free. The virtual net metering deal, and this is all based on state law, can cover 5 electrical meters. Based on some preliminary calculations, and I'm reluctant to say that these are verified because they're not, we might be able to save about $50,000 per year over a 20-year period. Our current electric bill for the town is about $212,000 a year. It's probably going to go up over time. So you're saving about not quite 25%, but close. Um, the nice thing about these net metering deals is you don't have to build anything. You don't have to do anything. You just sign a piece of paper and your electric bill costs come down in theory. One question I have, and we need to answer, is streetlights. We don't have good billing information on the streetlights. Now, since we can only get 5 meters into this plan, we want to get your 5 biggest users. And the streetlights, even though they might come off multiple meters, apparently the state considers them as one entity. So I would like to get that information from somebody. I don't know who has it, but that could, if we get more energy used in the streetlight, then we save more money by putting that into the 5.
George, I think I don't know, because you've been handling this, and obviously the committee. We may have that answer in the fiscal office, but also, we can even, if need be, there has to be an answer in some kind of a meter. If not, we could. There's probably a way to calculate what that usage is by.
Jeff,
Go ahead.
it's Dan. We do have that in the fiscal office, George, so I can pull it for you.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, well, I know Dan can solve every financial question. Well, no doubt we can get the information. I just, I don't have access to it. So
believe it or not, the largest energy use is the library.
Yeah, there's no doubt, but I'll bet streetlights are better or more than some of the smaller buildings. You've seen the data, Dan. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Well, Dan can get that for you. So
Yeah, I'll get it for you tomorrow, George.
Wow, tomorrow, huh?
So at some point, I'd like to ask Dan to take the numbers that come out of Solomon Energy and just do an audit and a verification to see that they're real.
I think that's a good idea.
I'm sure Dan would do that even if we didn't ask him to. But
Yeah, we'll do it, George.
This is sort of an interesting question that came up, but the state has a big waiting list. Apparently, this is a very popular option with a lot of towns. There's a cutoff as to how many credits the state and Eversource will issue. Now, the waiting list is very long right now. According to our consultant, the state is considering possibly including everybody on the waiting list in like one fell swoop. So basically, if you're on the list, you're going to get your credits. The trick is that you want to be on the list if the state does that. You don't want to not be on the list and then try to get on later because you might not get in. So there is maybe some time sensitivity here to get on the list. Now, I'll say that applying for it doesn't cost us anything. And if we decide later on we don't want to do it, we can. That doesn't cost us anything either. We can just say no, even if our time comes to get into the project, we just say no, we don't want to do it. That it doesn't cost us anything. So, I think we should do some due diligence, make sure we want to do this. But I would encourage the board of finance and the board of selectmen to get on this and get us approved, or at least get us our application in sometime by the middle of February. That seems to be the time frame that they're talking about.
George, if you could reach out to Cindy Harrison. When we first came into office, one of the issues we ran into, and I don't know if it still holds, is in order to, if my recollection is right, there had to be shovel-ready projects that they were ready to go. So we would have to, and if that's true, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch to get it into February.
No, these are Jeff. Let me say, I have spoken to Cindy. I talked to her today about it.
Okay.
However, these are not projects that we're not doing the shoveling on this. This is done by a company that does this, and they already have sites available. And in less than a year, they can build a solar array, and you're online. So this is not at all like what we had with Jordan Energy. We're not putting solar panels on our landfill. We're not putting them on a building. And this seems to be the way that a lot of municipalities are going because it doesn't require any capital investment and you don't have to sacrifice your roofs. I mean, there's a lot of risks when you put one of these things on a roof. If the roof fails and you have to take the panel down, well, you're going to have to pay essentially damages to the company that put the panels on there because they're not getting their revenue, and then you got to pay for the cost of taking the panels off and putting them back up again. So that could totally blow out your savings over a multi-year period.
Okay.
So this is a little different. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about shovel ready, but since we're not the ones that need to swing the shovels, we don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
So anyway, that's what I have there. Strategic planning really hasn't been anything new. The same issues I talked about the last meeting are still there. Road study, there's a meeting scheduled for about 2 weeks from now. IT steering, again, no meetings, nothing to report. Police radio upgrade, I don't have any news there either, although I imagine some things have been done. We did have a meeting today about the hiring of a new land use administrator. It might switch over so that the planning becomes a consultant activity, possibly hired through COG. And then instead of a land use administrator that handles all of the planning functions as well, they just focus on the administration side. But that's a topic for a longer discussion. And that's it.
Okay, Justin?
Economic development has not met recently, but I did get a update from Kevin. There's a new restaurant promotion going on with the Southbury Business Association. It's called Eat, Click, Submit, Win. It starts January 11th, runs through March 20th. There'll be a new winner each week. And, you know, the basic gist of it is you eat out, you take a picture of your receipt, you send it in. That's sort of your raffle ticket. And they're going to draw a winner every week to win $25 to go to a local restaurant. One of many, efforts are being made to promote and support our local restaurants, which, frankly, have it some of the worst of all of our local businesses as we work through the pandemic, particularly in winter. Patio seating's no longer available, etc. There are some updates regarding state and federal funding for small businesses. These are on the website if anybody at home is listening and wants more detail, but they include the CT Business Recovery Grant, which is $35 million in grants that are focused on 2,000 of Connecticut's hardest hit businesses. Special focus on restaurants and hospitality-based business. Grants will be anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. And for this one, there is no application process. Those businesses which meet the criteria are going to be sent a check directly from DRS within the next few weeks. On the federal side, obviously, we all heard about the recent passing of the additional stimulus, $900 billion bill. So more PPP loans and employee retention tax credits are coming. And one interesting point about all that is if you took out a PPP loan in 2020, you can take advantage of the ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, in 2021, and you may be able to apply part of that backwards to 2020. IPOC did meet December 21st. You guys get the same flash updates that all of us get as far as how the funds are performing, and the performance remains stellar. We beat all of our benchmarks for another quarter. So we are doing all three funds, pension, library, reserves, are doing better than the benchmarks, which is what we weigh ourselves against. No major actions taken there as far as rebalancing or changing anything, and the next meeting will be February 23rd. Senior Commission did have a meeting. We all got letters from them. They have some concern about, when things get back to normal, are they going to have the staff and the buses? I'm sure we'll address that further in our budget talks. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Jason?
The LEPC and Tree didn't meet. Historic buildings met, but they met in person, and I had a conflicting work meeting. I couldn't get there in time. I communicated with the chair. They primarily talked about maintenance items and budget items for the upcoming year, and they still have some openings, some vacancies that they're trying to determine the best way to be able to fill. And then not on my list, I already talked about, I was at the Connecticut Water Customer Advisory meeting last night. I already talked about the main part of that meeting, which was the rate increase, but something else I figured I'd mention, especially since we have the social services person coming on who they deal with, is we talked at the last meeting about how we have this fund, and Connecticut Water has funds in various towns to help people behind on their bills. What they also have is COVID payment plans now. So if people are having trouble, and it doesn't have to be because of COVID, it doesn't have to be because they can't pay because of COVID, just if they want to get involved in this, it's an interest-free program that can be up to 24 months. And they have to enroll during the governor's stated public health and emergency preparedness emergency. Currently that expires on February 9th. I assume that'll be extended, but so I just mentioned that as another topic that was discussed last night. That's it.
Thank you. Selectman Harrison? Emily?
The library meeting, library meets tomorrow. The last EMS committee meeting was canceled. Couldn't host it virtually, but they will be doing a special meeting tomorrow, next week, Tuesday, to make up for that, and still have their regular meeting at the end of the month. So nothing new to report there.
Emily, are they going to be able to make a recommendation or work on the request of by the ambulance company?
Yeah, they're working on all of that right now, which is why they were disappointed in the meeting being canceled last month and felt it was necessary to meet in a special meeting sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
None of my committees have met since we were last together. Parks and Rec next meets on the 28th. Region 15 planning meets on the 19th. Jeff, I do have some concerns that, I looked back at my notes and the records. Planning hasn't met since October. Since October, their November and December meetings were canceled. So I think we talked a little bit about it with the change in planning, but I do think that's I think it's important that they get back on a regular schedule. Region 15, their first meeting of the calendar year is on the 11th, and next week they go back to sort of their normal hybrid, at the high schools and in-person schedule. They've been in remote learning for the first weeks back.
On that, Mike, I'm planning, if there's a question about that. I talked to David Richards, and so what we're going to do, obviously Betsy is wonderfully can operate the technology and is fluent in it and does a very good job. So what we're doing is there was a meeting, VBA, where what we're doing is we're having, because there's some question of operating the technology, which some people are concerned with, and some of us are not afraid of. Push the button, my wife always used to say, just go ahead. It's not going to end the world. So what we're doing is I'm having, at every meeting, I have asked that, let's say Debbie is supposed to be running the ZBA, and I've asked Amy to attend at that meeting to run the electronic functionality of a Teams meeting and recording and whatnot. That being said, we have the streaming going on, and sometimes the streaming does fail. But we also record these meetings separately with the equipment we have. So we're not only, if this meeting were to not be, for some reason, stop being broadcast to the public, we would still have the recording that we see here now. Thirdly, we're going to do a recording like an iPad, like we used to, where you just record the meeting itself onto, so there's 3 ways to do it. And then at the next planning meeting, the person who's supposed to be running the planning meeting I get back and forth. Amy was to run the planning meeting, then Debbie would run the electronic.
Okay.
So they've had some run-throughs with that, with David Richards. Dave was with them at the last ZBA meeting to get familiarized with the equipment. Don't be afraid, because if the streaming stops, it's still okay. We've got the recording and we can post it. We're still in compliance. So we've been working on that. And I think we do have some, so we should be back
Great.
getting planning back up and our groups back up. Okay?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of it too. So.
Okay. All right. Next is I entertain a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of the Public Works Director's performance regarding the purchase of and procurement process and handling of internal personnel issues in executive session, inviting Dan Colton and Claire Morris in on the meeting, along with the Board of Selectmen. Did I miss anybody on that invite?
Is Jeff Tinley there?
And also, what's that?
Is Jeff Tinley part of this?
No.
Okay.
Our labor attorney was not able to attend tonight.
Oh.
And also for the purposes of entering into an executive session for discussion after that of the possible real estate transaction. Is that correct, Jason? Does that work? You're the legal beagle here for.
Jason, you're muted.
Jason, you're muted.
Yep, sorry. For the real estate transaction concerning 35 Hitchcock Road, because public discussion and publicity concerning it could have an impact on the price.
Do I have
I'll
that
second.
motion? Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. Made it. Mike, I'll give you the second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It's unanimous, and we will call back in on the Teams meeting.
The other link, right?
Correct. Thank you. See you in a bit.